Welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. Escape from the corporate rat race to empowered franchise ownership. Are you ready to take control of your destiny, follow your dreams, and live life on your own terms? Join our hosts, Dave and Pete, for insights on how to break free from the corporate grind, ditch the 9-to-5, and step into empowered franchise ownership.
Good morning and welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. My name is Dave Greenberg and I am here with my podcast partner, Pete Gilfillan.
Good morning, Dave.
How are you doing today?
I am pumped up. We got some exciting stuff to talk about today.
You know, one that we're going to talk about today is something that everyone's thinking about in our life stage. Retirement realities.
I think that's a big one, right? Because as we get older, we see a lot of our friends and these what's going on in the workforce for older executives. And we'll define older as somebody 50 older, it's pretty significant what we're seeing.
We talk about this every day. You know, you go through life stages, right? You're surrounded by kids, you're surrounded by weddings, you're surrounded by college, you're surrounded by aging parents. You and I have the fortunate experience to be surrounded by people who are facing retirement realities. And the beauty of it is we help people work through it every day. Everyone we speak to is like, okay, how am I going to set myself up over the next decade and think about the realities of retirement? So in this podcast, Pete, I thought we'd take a deep dive into the opportunities and challenges that's really facing today's workforce. You know, how do you grab a hold of those golden years? And, I read this Wall Street Journal article that really, was a bit of an inspiration for this. And, here's what late in life career layoffs look like in America. And that was the title of the article. And it was really kind of exploring the disruptions and how they're affecting older workers' lives and finances.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing now, as we talk about layoffs late in career, it's more prevalent now. It's a lot more frequent. I mean, it is common now to see layoffs, and we're seeing, the 50 to 65-year-olds, 14% are laid off once in a prior decade, and everybody's kind of experiencing it now. And it shows that it isn't rare anymore. It used to be rare that there were layoffs. Now it's a big deal. And in a Forbes article, they kind of talked about that nearly 25% of older Gen X and baby boomers have been laid off, and it's going to continue to happen. And the impact when you're older is significant. It's just alone, there were 172,000 workers laid off in the first half of 2025. The demographics, it's pretty scary what's going on.
It's the shifting economy. It is booming for some, but others it's stressing a little bit. And, Pete, you and I talk to candidates every day. And the one thing that my candidates, they're doing a great job of looking at transitions, thinking about transitions, and doing some self-assessment. But the real mystery and the challenge is the extended job search for mature workers or older workers. It takes longer. It's harder for those people that are over 50 years old. And I was looking again at the Wall Street Journal article, and it says on average it's 26 weeks of unemployment if you're in 55 to 64. Now, if you're in that younger 25 to 34, it's just 19 weeks.
Yep.
Or if you're over 65 and want to go back to the W-2 world, the average is 32 weeks. And thing that I see, Pete, with my candidates is that's the piece of self-assessment that they're holding on to too long. Because everyone has runway. Unless you have this balance sheet that's going to carry you for a long time, which a lot of them do, no one wants to burn that cash. And we have to figure out how to get our candidates to say, okay, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let's face the realities of trying to get a W-2 job. And how do you go after these parallel paths?
Well, you don't put all your eggs in one basket, clearly, right? So, I was a vice president of blank. I've got all this experience and all this kind of stuff, so I deserve to get another vice president of blank role. Well, the bottom line is you may have been aged out, and it's just the reality of what's going on. And so when you get pushed into transition, and again, 50% of 50-plus-year-old corporate executives get pushed into retirement before they're ready, you need to start preparing now. And the idea is you can set up some plans, but if you do get pushed out, make sure that you're exploring multiple paths that you can take, so that you are not putting all your eggs in one basket of trying to find that executive position. And after, call it 36 weeks or whatever the number is, you can't find anything. Well, bottom line is, if you're looking at other things like starting a consulting business, investing in a franchise, buying an existing business, at least you have options, but don't try to ride the horse too long or put all your eggs into one basket of looking for another executive position. It might not be there.
Tell me, we were talking about this earlier. What else isn't there that they're used to?
Well, I think it's, when we talk about it, when they come back. So let's just say I go through that 26 weeks to find another job. And bottom line is I'm going to probably come back with a lower wage, meaning my wage, I'm going to come in at a lower pay. The interesting stat I always use is, again, 50% of 50-plus-year-old corporate executives get pushed out into retirement before they're ready. Of the 50% that get pushed out, only like 10% get back what they were making or more. So most people, if you're pushed out later in your career, if you are lucky enough to get another position, your wages could be down as much as, I think, the older workers, it could be 10, 15%. It's kind of crazy from that standpoint. And if you dig into it, laid off workers, they're just getting back into the game. I call it the term underemployed. And you're seeing this more and more as it goes forward for workers that are even younger. They're getting underpaid from that standpoint. It's a significant issue, right? So especially when we are, maybe have kids in college, or we got kids that are getting married and we're helping them out with that kind of stuff, or our parents are getting older, we're now going into these times where we need extra cash and we're going to get paid less.
I think it's a key point that you make, that extra cash, because these disruptions that we're seeing in retirement plans often, get disrupted when your balance sheet might not be ready for you to retire. Back in the days, $1 million, $2 million, okay, I feel like I have some space, right? But when you really think of it, that $1 or $2 million balance sheet needs to be $8 to $10 million if you want to live that $400,000 or $500,000 executive lifestyle. People prepare for that, they get rid of their debt and all that stuff, but it's not really hard. It's hard to fall off that lifestyle you're used to.
Well, the deal is that truthfully, most people don't, right? You kind of get used to taking those trips. You're kind of used to having a lake house. You're kind of used to all that kind of stuff, and certainly doing the stuff that you want to do. And so it's significant. And, when we talk about kind of that latter part of your career, that's a lot of times where you're trying to bank cash, right? You get the bonuses, you're throwing them. You don't necessarily have to have that college education, all that kind of stuff, paying for your kids. So you're looking to maximize your savings because you've had to maybe go a little bit lighter than you'd expect because of life things that are happening. Right. But see, now what we're seeing is that this can put a real dent into it, right? Where you're planning on having this much money by the time you're 65, and all of a sudden you get laid off, and that puts a kink in it. Well, now what people are having to do is to push back their retirement, or basically reset what their expectations are for retirement. And we're seeing that this is now translating and pushing down to Generation X, right? Where they're not prepared for retirement. And so the deal is that disruptions in your career late can have a significant impact on your retirement plans.
And, to your point, you're trying to bank the cash out of a W-2 job. And, you've worked through the stock options. It's a retention thing, right? Yeah. They're not throwing all the stock options at the 55 to 57 years old. They want the new 30-year-old to really buy in and hard like we did in the hopes of getting that payout. So one thing I'd throw into your discussion about banking, we talk a lot about helping people create wealth in their golden years, right? And we can talk about, you want to roll up your sleeves, you want to continue to work and build wealth, not exchange time for money like a W. Absolutely, we have that. Or you want to take that skill set, you want to take the balance sheet you have and work on it and enjoy life and build wealth. We can do that as well. And, it's kind of sometimes hard to get our candidates to self-assess against is my favorite subject, ageism. Yeah. And systemic barriers to people who are in our life stage in the W-2 space. And it's a major hurdle. You can go to the Wall Street Journal article. You can go to AARP, one of our favorite people that sends us all that mail. I don't even know what I do with it. You know, employers have biases against older workers. Tech skills and longevity, just a fact. And, you know, you get lumped into that group that stresses the age discrimination and that extends into job searches and hunts, with fewer openings kind of matching the experience that they're looking for.
You know, you and I work with executives all the time, and one of the things they say is, Pete, you know, I'm doing really well at the company, but now I'm experiencing ageism. People are younger than me are getting promoted and I'm not, and I see the writing on the wall, and that's just the reality of it. So we're talking a lot today about getting pushed out of the workforce, and when you're trying to get back in, we talked about the time it takes 26 weeks for somebody that's 50 plus years old, you know, to find another job. This is significant from the standpoint of that this is a real impact on people, and part of that impact is because of ageism. It's just, that's the reality. We're not changing it. I know it's not fair, but that's the reality of the world, is that to the corporate world, as you get older, you're worth less. And you're less desirable to them because you're more expensive, all that kind of stuff. They'd rather have somebody younger, they can pay more. And so that's the reality. One of the other things as we talk about this, reality is that we need to make sure that we set our expectations the right way. Put a plan in place that understanding that we know we're going to have headwinds as we get older in our career, right? We know that we have a higher risk of being laid off. We have a higher risk of age discrimination. We have all this stuff going. So you need to start preparing for that. And if you get pushed out, it's making sure you got the health coverage and stuff like that. But we're seeing now that you have to skill up a little bit, right? So you got to be prepared. So go take a class on AI, right? Get skilled up, because bottom line is you're going to get impact. So put together strategies, set your expectation this is going to happen, deal with reality opposed to just, I hope I'm going to push through and make it till I'm 65.
Yeah. Pete, you're a planner, and the reason why you do so well is you execute on that plan. And when you reflect on what we just talked about, late career layoffs are a reality, a stark reality. And having the ability to self-assess and being aware and prepared to mitigate that damage that's coming your way, you need to do it. You need to be in front of it. And, if you want to think about owning a business as part of that transition or part of that disruption to really offset, the risks, whether you're looking at it as a portfolio or opportunities, whatever you want to call it, Pete and I help people do that every day. So take 15 minutes, go to hireyourself.com or go to empoweredfranchisee.com, book 15 minutes with either Pete and I, and we can talk to you about how people explore the possibilities of business ownership through franchising. We are America's top team. We've helped more people than anyone out there. So why not give us 15 minutes and we'll see if it makes sense to work together.
Yeah, and start, the idea is that it's free to learn, right? To just learn about your different options. It's best to be prepared because it's coming, and you need to make sure that you do what you need to do to be prepared for this. And so we're excited. We're here to help you. Again, set up a 15-minute call with either one of us. We're here to help you.
Absolutely. All right, Pete, thanks for a great subject today, retirement realities.
Thanks for tuning in to the Escape and Empower podcast. We hope today's discussion has inspired you to consider franchise ownership as a path to living life on your own terms. Start your journey towards financial freedom and flexibility. Connect with Dave at empoweredfranchisee.com or Pete at hireyourself.com. Until next time.